So here's the radio again. As you can tell, when it's close to the phone, because the phone has radio frequency, it causes interference. I put it near the Vizio television and I get interference, but it changes the sound. So it doesn't always sound like that. It changes. And that has made this much easier. So what I'm going to do is tell you what they're talking about. Now they're upset because they were getting things wrong that are already on YouTube. So they're getting things in YouTube videos wrong, which is partly what I'm telling you. It's impossible for it to be right in reality if when you go to a YouTube video, watch the same video that I watch and you get it wrong. Partly what I was talking about, and they just said what I was talking about, subjective versus objective. People, when we give our opinions, we're subjective. It's human nature. So if we like someone, we might interpret something one way. If we dislike that person, we'll interpret something a different way. Partly the examples that I'm giving you in their stories are subjective. So they expected me to give my subjective opinion, but a lot of stories I don't have to. Like I said, if you're talking about things that happened in the past and you have objective information that shows it wasn't a big deal, you can't then later say, well, subjectively, I think it's a big deal, which is partly what I've been claiming all along. A lot of this is just what I've been saying, which is that their subjective dislike of me makes everything I do suspicious. I can't be trusted. I did this maliciously. But objectively, if you were around me and gave me thank you cards, letters, invites to places, said I'm a sweet person, it's not subjective. Why is it not subjective? Because it's also agreeing with other people who were around me at that time. So if other people at the time agreed with I was a good person, I was a sweet person, then it becomes not subjective, it's objective. People all around are saying this. So then decades later, when you say, well, no, she was horrible, she was this, she was that, then we have to say, well, why did your opinion of me today change based on something in the past? And I can put it the other way. So why did your past opinion of me change based on how you feel about me today? Because you couldn't get me to do the wrong thing. I'm just going to move this back because it's hard. I feel like I'm yelling over it and this is going to make my voice go. I'm going to just shut this off because I think we proved this part already. It's, the yelling is making my voice go. So before I get to a point where my voice completely goes, I'm just going to shut that off. So what I'm saying is, by them taking a subjective stance and not able to look at the facts at the time, they tried to make it seem like I was a bad person. And they just started to say, well, that goes back to any sort of interpersonal issues. Exactly. If we're going to talk about interpersonal issues, you can't have it both ways. And what I think, and what somebody in this group thinks also, is that I was a sweet person, a kind person, and they thought they could take advantage, which is what I used to say. Kindness is not weakness. But going back to what I'm talking about, if you today feel you dislike someone, your subjective opinion of that person won't mean as much as an objective opinion of that person. Going to a video, you can objectively look at the video. Is this what was said? Is this not what was said? So that the video becomes an objective viewpoint from the subjective opinion. When I talk about multiple opinions becoming objective, yes, because it's not just one opinion at the time, it's multiple opinions. That becomes objective. It's no longer subjective because they're in agreement. And that is what I'm talking about, that if I didn't have all of this to prove it, it would have worked. It's still working. I'm still fighting for my civil rights. Why should I be monitored all the time? They said, oh, this was some sort of way of group therapy. Let me tell you what happened to the people they put in this. We have people crying, screaming, angry. They put in how they want me to commit acts of violence. I've been going through, I told you, playlists where I'm trying to add new videos where they use the word never, but I can't use the word never. They say things, they said that there's a different standard for them, for me. Again, this is no longer the United States if that's what's happening. In the United States, we're all equal. So when they're talking about like certain things and they're saying that I am treated differently, well, what's different about me? I don't know. you guys you guys can take a look. What's the most obvious difference between me and them? So they say, well, you can't say that if some people are black. Are they all female? Are they all 51? Are they, so yes, I can say it. If you're talking about a black man, he's not a female. If you're talking about a black woman who is under 50, she's not a 51-year-old. If you're talking about someone who can identify with a different group than my group, that person's not in my group. Partly what I think happened, and when they were upset early, they said, oh, we taught you some of these things about race, ethnicity, facial features. You taught me at 40 something, 50 something. So you admit I didn't learn this growing up. In America, when we were growing up, we didn't learn about face shapes, head shapes, foreheads. It's something we didn't learn about because it would be hard. Maybe because we are a country with so many different groups that if you come, they say, if you come from a country where you have base mainly one group, or you have very few other group people. So we'll use the terminology of, you have people who are a certain race or certain ethnicity, then you can recognize someone who's not in your ethnicity. Growing up in the Bronx, we had all different types of people. It would be too hard to teach one how to identify one group. You would have to teach us as kids, and I'm talking about growing up in, I said, the 80s. All these different groups, different heads, it would be impossible. First of all, it would be illegal. We won't even, at this point, we don't even talk about legality anymore with this group. They violated my civil rights, but they also violated the civil rights of the people whose voices are being played out loud. But going back to that, it would be impossible. So when they're talking, they're trying to go back on my videos and look at little things. Uh, I want to link in this a news report from CBS News about speaking through camera systems, meaning people are talking about this now. There are other issues I want them to talk about because I think it's part of what happened in America to us as Americans. I think I'm just one example of what happened to me as an American citizen. I think it's happening to other American citizens. I'm going to pause this and just come back with what I wanted to say. Okay, so I'm trying to do posts about mind reading tricks, and there's something called the Franklin effect, and I found that in a video. It's people will like you more ask them if you ask them a small favor, meaning if you say, oh, could you do this for me, that person's more likely to like you more. So that's the Franklin effect, and I'm going to link that video. So what I'm talking about with all of this is that things were happening to us in America. We didn't understand it because I believe it's a foreign sort of psychological operation. Why isn't it not American? Because if it were American, it would have been more successful. It wouldn't have been as obvious. This is obvious. They're upset about the fact that I'm talking to you guys about these things that's so obvious, because they are obvious. Something happened after 2016. This was not happening prior to that. Trying to change the date to a different date, it doesn't work. The other big deal about this is that when they're lying about certain things, it doesn't offend me as much. If you say no man like me, blah, blah, who cares? But when you call me a child molester, I'm going to continue to pursue you until I get justice. No one should be falsely accused of that crime, it's a crime. We're not going to pretend it's not a crime. It's of that crime because there are too many actual cases of people who were molested who didn't get justice. And that's part of why I will continue to fight this. The other big deal about this is that I went on classmates.com to find out who was looking at me. I want to let people know if I was not your friend in high school, I'm talking directly to you folks. Don't look me up on classmates.com. I will not get in touch with you. And at one point, I'll just block you. I don't want you in my life. So, yes, there are people who in high school were contributed to the 1991 incident going wrong, but fortunately, thankfully, the person is okay, who could have helped and didn't help. This is a repeat of that, where people target specific people. Like I said, head shapes. It's so important because, you know, we're talking about race, ethnicity, and do I think that that young woman was specifically targeted because she's West Indian? Yes. I was told that it was because they thought it was just her mother, her little brother, and her. They didn't know she had other people in her life, which is exactly what they told me when they were targeting me. So you're targeting vulnerable people, people you think are vulnerable, thinking that other people won't step up. That's partly this issue. That if you're targeting people because you feel they're vulnerable, you know, they targeted me because they said no one likes me. I can't attract a man. That's saying the same thing. You think I'm vulnerable and no one will care if I die. That's the biggest part of this issue. Thank you for watching.